Kim Tae-ho kicked a small rock down the mountain path as his classmates walked ahead of him. The school trip to the caves near Seoul was supposed to be educational, but he found it boring. His teacher kept talking about rock formations and ancient history while Tae-ho just wanted to explore somewhere interesting. "Stay with the group," called out Mrs. Yang, their teacher. But Tae-ho had already spotted something that made him curious. There was a narrow opening in the rock wall that the tour guide had not mentioned. It looked like a crack, but when he got closer, he could see it was actually a small tunnel. Tae-ho looked back at his classmates. They were all listening to the guide explain something about limestone. Nobody was paying attention to him. He squeezed through the opening and found himself in a hidden cave chamber. The chamber was bigger than he expected. Strange blue light came from somewhere deeper inside. Tae-ho pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The walls were covered with marks that looked like writing, but not in any language he knew. The blue light was coming from the far end of the chamber. He walked toward the light, his footsteps echoing in the quiet space. At the end of the chamber sat something that definitely did not belong in an old cave. It was a crystal device about the size of a basketball, floating a few inches above a stone platform. The crystal pulsed with soft blue light, and Tae-ho could hear a quiet humming sound coming from it. "What the hell is this thing?" Tae-ho said to himself. He had seen enough science fiction movies to know that glowing crystals were usually important, but this looked too real to be a movie prop and too advanced to be something from ancient times. He walked around the crystal, taking pictures with his phone. The device seemed to respond to his presence. The humming got louder and the blue light started flashing in patterns. Tae-ho reached out to touch it, then stopped. Every movie he had ever seen told him this was a bad idea, but he was 16 years old, and 16-year-old boys are not famous for making good decisions. The moment his finger touched the crystal surface, the world exploded into light and sound. A holographic display appeared in the air around him, showing symbols and text in languages he had never seen. The crystal began spinning faster, and the humming became a loud vibrating noise that he could feel in his chest. "Welcome, potential contestant," said a voice in perfect Korean. Tae-ho jumped backward, but the crystal followed his movement, floating closer to him. "You have activated a galactic tournament registration device. Please select your preferred combat category." Tae-ho stared at the floating menus around him. This had to be some kind of advanced virtual reality system. Maybe the government was testing new technology in these caves. The graphics looked incredibly real, better than anything he had seen in gaming arcades. "Combat category," he said slowly. "So this is like a fighting game." The holographic interface showed several options with pictures. Most of the symbols meant nothing to him, but he could see images of different types of weapons and fighting styles. One section showed hand-to-hand combat. Another showed weapons fighting. A third showed something that looked like space battles. "I guess hand-to-hand combat," Tae-ho said, touching the option. The menu changed to show more choices. Difficulty level? There were 5 options, from what looked like beginner to expert. Tae-ho had always been good at video games. He selected the highest difficulty without thinking about it. "Registration complete," the voice announced. "Contestant Kim Tae-ho of planet Earth has been entered in the Apex tournament. Maximum difficulty. Division. Qualification round begins in 10 minutes. Transportation initiating." "Wait, what?" Tae-ho started to say, but the crystal was already glowing brighter. The cave around him began to fade away like it was dissolving. He felt a strange pulling sensation, as if something was trying to turn him inside out. "Transportation error detected," the voice said, sounding confused. "Subject is not wearing regulation combat armor. Emergency protection protocols activated." The world disappeared. When Tae-ho could see again, he was standing in the middle of what looked like the biggest room he had ever seen. The ceiling was so high he could not see it, and the walls stretched out in all directions. The floor was made of some kind of metal that reflected light like a mirror. But the room was not empty. It was full of creatures that definitely were not human. Some looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs, covered in scales and wearing armor. Others looked like insects the size of people, with multiple arms and glowing eyes. There were beings made of what appeared to be living rock, creatures that seemed to be made of pure energy, and things so strange that Tejo could not even begin to describe them. All of them were looking at him. "Holy crap," Tejo whispered. "This is not a video game." A creature that looked like a cross between a dinosaur and an octopus walked over to him. It had 4 arms and was wearing some kind of official uniform. When it spoke, Tejo could somehow understand the words even though he was sure it was not speaking Korean. "Are you the human contestant?" the creature asked. Its voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "I guess so," Tejo said. "But I think there has been a mistake. I just touched this crystal thing in a cave and now I am here and I have no idea what is going on." The creature looked at a device in one of its hands. "Kim Tejo, Planet Earth. Registered for Maximum Difficulty Division of the Apex Tournament. Registration is valid and cannot be changed once the tournament begins." "Tournament? The Apex Tournament is held once every 100 Earth years," the creature explained. "It brings together the greatest warriors from across the galaxy to compete for the title of Supreme Combat Champion. To qualify for the main tournament, each contestant must eliminate 1,000 opponents in individual combat." Tejo felt his stomach drop. 1,000? That seems like a lot. "Most contestants do not expect to survive the qualification round," the creature continued. "The fact that you registered for maximum difficulty suggests you are either incredibly skilled or completely insane." Around them, other creatures were making sounds that Tejo guessed were laughter. A giant insect thing clicked its mandibles in what seemed like amusement. A rock creature made a noise like an avalanche. "Look," Tejo said. "I think there has been a big misunderstanding. I am just a high school student. I have never fought anyone professionally. I do not even know how to use weapons. Ignorance of tournament rules does not excuse participation," the creature said. "You have been registered. You must compete or forfeit your life." Tejo looked around at all the alien warriors surrounding him. They looked like they could tear him apart without trying. Most of them were twice his size and covered in natural armor or carrying weapons that looked like they belonged in science fiction movies. "When does this tournament start?" he asked weakly. "In 30 minutes, the creature replied. "I am Commander Kex, Tournament Overseer. You will be given basic weapons and armor. The qualification round will continue until you have eliminated 1,000 opponents or until you are eliminated yourself." Tejo sat down on the metal floor and put his head in his hands. His mom was going to kill him if he survived long enough to get home. "This cannot be real," he said to himself. But when he looked up, all the alien warriors were still there, and Commander Kex was still waiting for his response. "Okay," Tejo said finally. "I guess I am in a tournament now." Tejo stood in the equipment room staring at the alien armor that was supposed to fit him. The metal suit looked like it was made for someone twice his size and 4 times as wide. When he tried to put it on, the chest piece fell down to his knees. "This is not going to work," he said to the equipment drone, a floating robot that looked like a metal box with arms. The drone made some beeping sounds and produced a smaller set of armor from somewhere inside itself. The second set fit better, but it was still loose. The helmet kept sliding down over his eyes and the boots were too big. When Tejo tried to walk, he sounded like a tin can rolling downstairs. "Great," he muttered. "I look ridiculous and I sound like a construction site." The weapon selection was even worse. The smallest energy rifle was longer than he was tall. The plasma sword weighed more than his backpack. Everything seemed designed for creatures much larger and stronger than humans. Finally, Tejo found a small energy pistol and a combat knife that he could actually lift. They were listed as emergency backup weapons in the equipment database. Most contestants would use them only if their main weapons failed. "Emergency backup weapons it is," Tejo said. He clipped the pistol to his belt and strapped the knife to his leg. He felt like a little kid playing dress-up in his father's clothes. "Commander," Kex's voice echoed through the preparation areas. "All contestants report to transport platforms. Qualification round begins in 5 minutes." Tejo followed the crowd of alien warriors to a large platform that glowed with the same blue light as the crystal he had touched in the cave. Around him, creatures checked their weapons and made final adjustments to their armor. Some of them were meditating. Others were roaring or making threatening gestures at their competitors. Contestants will be transported to Arena Section 7, Commander Kex announced. Combat begins immediately upon arrival. Elimination count will be tracked automatically. Good luck. The platform flashed, and suddenly Tejo was standing in what looked like a destroyed city. Buildings were half collapsed, streets were cracked and broken, and smoke drifted through the air. It looked like a war zone from a movie. Around him, other contestants appeared on similar platforms scattered throughout the area. Tejo counted at least 50 other fighters in his immediate section. They all looked much more comfortable with the situation than he felt. A loud horn sounded, and immediately the other contestants started moving toward each other. Tejo quickly ducked behind a broken wall as energy blasts and projectile weapons started flying through the air. Okay, he said to himself. This is actually happening. People are trying to kill me now. A creature that looked like a walking tree with too many arms appeared around the corner of his hiding spot. It was carrying what appeared to be a weapon made from crystallized lightning. The creature saw Tejo and raised its weapon. Tejo did not think. He just moved. Somehow, he knew exactly when the creature would fire. He dove to the side just as a bolt of energy burned through the air where his head had been. While he was moving, he pulled out his energy pistol and fired 3 quick shots. The first shot missed. The second shot hit the creature in what Tejo guessed was its shoulder. The third shot hit it somewhere that made it collapse and disappear in a flash of light. Elimination count. 1, announced a voice in his helmet. 999 remaining for qualification. Tejo stared at the spot where the tree creature had been standing. I actually did that. I actually just won a fight against an alien warrior. He did not have time to think about it. More creatures were moving through the destroyed city, and some of them had noticed his position. Tejo ran toward a collapsed building that looked like it would provide better cover. As he ran, he realized something strange was happening. He could somehow sense where the other contestants were, even when he could not see them. It was like having a mental map that showed him where dangers were coming from. A giant insect creature dropped from above, trying to land on him with what looked like sword arms. Tejo rolled to the side and came up firing. His shots hit the creature's weak points without him even aiming carefully. Elimination count. 2, the voice announced. How am I doing this? Tejo wondered aloud. But there was no time for analysis. More contestants were converging on his position. For the next hour, Tejo moved through the arena like he was playing the world's most realistic video game. Every time an enemy appeared, he somehow knew exactly how they would attack, and exactly how to counter it. When a rock creature tried to crush him with massive fists, he slipped between its legs and attacked its joints. When flying creatures tried to attack from above, he used the destroyed buildings for cover and picked them off one by one. Elimination count. 25, the voice announced. Other contestants were starting to notice him. Tejo could hear them communicating in their various alien languages. He could not understand the words, but the tone was clear. They were talking about the small human who was somehow winning fights against much larger opponents. Elimination count, 50. Tejo was starting to get into a rhythm. He would find a good position, wait for enemies to come to him, then use the environment to his advantage. When creatures tried to fight him in open areas, he would retreat to places with more cover. When they tried to corner him in small spaces, he would use his smaller size to escape through gaps they could not follow. Elimination count, 100. By now, Tejo was attracting attention from beyond the arena. In viewing areas throughout the tournament station, alien spectators were gathering to watch the human contestant who was somehow eliminating opponents faster than anyone had expected. Look at his fighting style, said one observer, a crystalline being from the Vorth system. He does not fight like a trained warrior. He fights like a survivor. His species must come from a very dangerous world, said another. Only constant threat would develop instincts like that. In the arena, Tejo was beginning to understand something about himself and his opponents. Most of the alien warriors fought like they had learned combat in schools or training centers. They used proper techniques and followed established strategies. But Taeho had grown up in a world where survival required quick thinking and constant adaptation. Elimination count 200. This is actually kind of fun, Taeho said as he used a plasma grenade to bring down a building on top of 3 opponents at once. It's like playing a strategy game, but with better graphics. The other contestants were starting to avoid him. Word was spreading through the arena that the small human was far more dangerous than he looked. Some creatures were forming temporary alliances to try to eliminate him, but Taeho adapted to that too. He would let them gather in groups, then use explosive weapons to eliminate multiple opponents at once. Elimination count 500. Commander Kex was receiving reports from arena observers that made no sense. The human contestant had reached the halfway point to qualification in record time. Most contestants took days to eliminate 500 opponents, if they survived that long. "Are you certain of these numbers?" Commander Kex asked his assistants. "Confirmed," replied the tournament computer. Human contestant Kim Taeho has eliminated 500 opponents in 6 hours. Current projection suggests he will reach qualification requirements within 12 hours. Commander Kex had overseen tournaments for 3 centuries. He had never seen anything like this. In the arena, Taeho was taking a short break behind the ruins of what had once been a large building. He was drinking water from his suit's supply system and eating an energy bar from his emergency kit. Elimination count 512. The voice announced as he finished off a group of opponents who had tried to ambush him. "Only 488 to go," Taeho said cheerfully. "This is way more interesting than the school trip would have been." He had no idea that his casual attitude toward what the galaxy considered its most challenging combat trial was about to change everything. News of the human contestant spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. In sports bars on distant worlds, alien beings gathered around viewing screens to watch something they had never seen before. A young creature from an unknown planet treating their most sacred combat tournament like a casual game. On the crystalline world of Vorth Prime, Champion Vorth himself stopped his meditation practice to watch the live feeds from the arena. He had won the last Apex tournament after eliminating exactly 1,001 opponents over the course of 3 months. The human child had reached 800 eliminations in less than 2 days. "This cannot be accurate," Vorth said to his attendants. "Show me the footage again." The holographic display replayed Taeho's latest series of eliminations. In the span of 10 minutes, he had taken down 12 opponents using nothing but environmental traps in his basic weapons. What made it more disturbing was his attitude. While other contestants fought with desperation and fury, the human looked almost bored. "Computer, analyze the human's fighting techniques," Vorth commanded. "Analysis complete," the AI responded. "Subject displays no formal combat training. Fighting style appears to be entirely instinctive. Recommendation: reclassify human species as potentially dangerous." Meanwhile, in the Insectoid Collective's military headquarters, Admiral Zeph was having a very different conversation with his intelligence officers. "How much do we know about this planet called Earth?" Admiral Zeph asked, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Very little, Admiral," replied his chief analyst. "Earth was surveyed centuries ago and classified as a Class 12. Death world. The survey team noted extremely hostile conditions and recommended avoiding contact with the native species." "Class 12, Admiral Zeph repeated. "That means the survival rate for our species on that world would be less than 1%. "Correct, sir. The planet has active geological instability, extreme weather variations, aggressive predatory life forms, and atmospheric conditions that would be toxic to most galactic species." Admiral Zeph watched the arena footage of Taeho casually eliminating a group of reptilian guards who were considered elite warriors in their home system. The human was using tactics that no military academy taught, improvising weapons from debris and moving through the combat zone like he owned it. "If their children can do this," Admiral Zeph said quietly, "what can their adults do?" Back in the tournament station, Commander Kex was dealing with a crisis he had never faced before. The betting systems had crashed completely when Taeho passed 900 eliminations. No mathematical model could calculate odds for his continued success because there was no historical data to compare it to. "Sir," said his assistant, We are receiving complaints from 17 different planetary governments. They are demanding we stop the tournament because too many of their elite warriors are being eliminated by one contestant. Tournament rules are absolute, Commander Kex replied, but his voice showed uncertainty. They cannot be changed once competition begins. Yes, sir, but we have another problem. We are running out of contestants in the qualification rounds. If the human continues at this rate, there will be no one left for him to fight. Commander Kex looked at the elimination counter. It now read 947. How is this possible, he muttered. No single contestant has ever eliminated more than 400 opponents in qualification rounds. In the arena, Tejo was completely unaware of the chaos he was causing. Throughout the galaxy, he had found a good defensive position in what used to be a government building and was systematically eliminating any contestant who tried to approach. Elimination count, 950, announced the voice in his helmet. Almost there, Tejo said, reloading his energy pistol. Just 50 more and then I can move on to whatever comes next. He had adapted to using alien weapons much faster than anyone expected. The energy pistol felt natural in his hand now, and he had learned to use the combat knife for close quarters fighting. More importantly, he had figured out how to use the arena environment as a weapon. When a group of flying creatures tried to attack him from above, he collapsed part of the building's ceiling on them. When ground-based opponents tried to rush his position, he used explosive charges to create barriers that channeled them into kill zones. Elimination count, 975. Back on Earth, Tejo's sister Park Minsu was having the worst day of her life. Military officials had arrived at her home that morning to inform her family that her brother had somehow been transported off-planet and was currently participating in an alien combat tournament. This has to be a joke, Minsu said to Colonel Lee Dongwu, the military liaison who was trying to explain the situation. My brother is 16 years old and afraid of spiders. There is no way he is fighting aliens in space. I understand your disbelief, Colonel Lee replied, but we have confirmed communication with the tournament organizers. Your brother is not only participating, he is dominating the competition. Colonel Lee showed her the alien footage on his tablet. Minsu watched in shock as her little brother casually eliminated opponents that looked like they belonged in horror movies. That is definitely Tejo, she said weakly. But how is he doing that? He has never been in a fight in his life. Our scientists think it has something to do with human evolutionary advantages, Colonel Lee explained. We evolved on a world that most alien species consider extremely dangerous. What seems like a death trap to them might feel normal to us. In the tournament station's VIP viewing area, representatives from dozens of galactic governments were having emergency meetings. The small human's performance was forcing them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about Earth and its inhabitants. We must establish diplomatic contact with Earth immediately, said the Crystalline Empire's ambassador. If their children can do this accidentally, we need to ensure their adults remain friendly toward us. Agreed, said the Reptilian Federation's representative. But we should also prepare defensive measures. A species that produces warriors like this could be a threat to galactic stability. On the arena floor, Tejo had just eliminated his 990th opponent. Elimination count 990, the voice announced. 10 more, Tejo said, stretching his arms. Then I can see what this tournament is really about. He had no idea that governments across the galaxy were already making plans based on his performance. Trade agreements were being rewritten. Military strategies were being reconsidered. Diplomatic missions were being organized. Elimination count, 995. In sports bars throughout the galaxy, crowds of alien beings fell silent as they watched the elimination counter climb toward the qualification mark. No one knew what would happen when the human reached 1,000 eliminations, but everyone sensed that the galaxy was about to change. Elimination count, 999. Tejo found his final opponent hiding in the ruins of a small building. It was a creature he had not seen before, covered in natural armor and carrying advanced weapons. It looked like it had been saving itself for a final confrontation. One more, Tejo said to himself. Then I can figure out what comes next. The armored creature charged at him with weapons blazing. Tejo sidestepped, used his combat knife to disable the creature's weapon systems, and eliminated it with a single shot from his energy pistol. Elimination count. 1,000, the voice announced. Qualification complete. Contestant Kim Tae-ho has qualified for the main tournament. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watching the tournament feeds sat in stunned silence. The human child had just accomplished what most species considered impossible, and he looked like he was ready for more. Tae-ho looked around the now empty arena and shrugged. That was pretty fun, he said. I wonder what the main tournament is like. He had no idea he was about to find out. After qualifying for the main tournament, Tae-ho was given a private rest area and told he would face the remaining qualified contestants in single combat matches. He expected this to be more challenging than the qualification rounds, but after his first 50 main tournament fights, he realized he was wrong. The individual matches were actually easier than the chaotic battlefield he had just survived. Each opponent came at him one at a time, using predictable attack patterns that he could counter without much effort. By his 100th main tournament victory, Tae-ho was yawning between fights. Is this really the best the galaxy has to offer? He asked Commander Kex during a break between matches. Commander Kex's forearms trembled slightly as he checked his tournament records. These are legendary warriors from across the known galaxy. Each one has defeated thousands of opponents to reach this level. They all fight the same way, though, Tae-ho said, taking a drink of water. They come at me directly. They use the same basic attack combinations, and they get frustrated when their first plan doesn't work. It's like fighting the same opponent over and over again. What Tae-ho did not understand was that most galactic species had developed formal combat training systems over thousands of years. They taught efficient, proven techniques that worked well in most situations. But humans had evolved differently. They had learned to fight in unpredictable, constantly changing environments where following rules meant death. By elimination 2500, Tae-ho started handicapping himself to make the fights more interesting. He began using only his non-dominant left hand for combat. When that became too easy, he started fighting while blindfolded, relying only on his hearing and instincts. The galactic audience watching these matches did not know how to react. In sports bars throughout the galaxy, beings sat in horrified silence as they watched a human child treat their greatest warriors like practice dummies. He is not even trying, whispered a crystalline observer on Vorth Prime. He is fighting our champions with one hand tied behind his back, literally. Champion Vorth himself had been watching every match. As the previous tournament winner, he was expected to fight Tae-ho eventually. The prospect terrified him more than he wanted to admit. Computer, Vorth said to his training facility's AI, simulate combat scenarios based on the human's fighting patterns. Unable to simulate, the computer replied. Subject's fighting style has no consistent patterns to analyze. Recommendation, avoid direct confrontation. I cannot avoid confrontation, Vorth said grimly. I am the defending champion. If I do not fight him, I will lose all honor. Meanwhile, Earth's governments were finally beginning to understand the situation. Colonel Lee Dongwoo had established communication with the tournament organizers and was trying to negotiate Tae-ho's return home. Your representative has exceeded all tournament records, Commander Kex told Colonel Lee through the quantum communicator. He has eliminated over 2,000 opponents and shows no signs of slowing down. He is just a child, Colonel Lee insisted. This was all an accident. We want him returned safely to his family. Tournament rules are absolute, Commander Kex replied, but his voice lacked conviction. However, if your representative continues at this rate, there will soon be no opponents left for him to fight. Back in the tournament station, alien military observers were having very different conversations. Admiral Zeph had called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Defense Council. We need to discuss the human situation, Admiral Zeph announced to the assembled representatives. Their combat capabilities far exceed our previous estimates. One individual does not represent an entire species. argued the Reptilian Federation's military attaché. Does it not? Admiral Zeph replied. This individual had no combat training, no advanced weapons, and no knowledge of galactic warfare. Yet he has dominated our finest warriors. If this is what their untrained children can accomplish, what might their military forces be capable of? The Crystalline Empire's representative leaned forward in his hovering chair. Our intelligence services have been researching Earth's history. The humans have been engaged in continuous warfare for their entire recorded history. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their own planet multiple times over. And they call it a peaceful world in their diplomatic communications, added the Insectoid Collective's ambassador. Perhaps, Admiral Zeph said quietly, their definition of peace is different from ours. In the tournament arena, Tejo had just finished his 2500th elimination. He was sitting on the edge of the combat platform, swinging his legs and looking bored. When do I get to fight someone actually challenging? He asked Commander Kex. You have defeated every qualified contestant except the defending champion, Commander Kex replied. Champion Vorth has requested a formal challenge match. Finally, Tejo said, jumping to his feet. Someone who might actually know how to fight. What Tejo did not realize was that Champion Vorth had spent the last several days in intensive meditation, trying to prepare mentally for what he believed might be his death. Vorth had reviewed every second of footage from Tejo's fights and had reached a disturbing conclusion. The human was not just winning, he was playing. The challenge match was scheduled for the following day, and news of it spread throughout the galaxy within hours. Betting systems that had been shut down since Tejo's qualification were hastily reactivated, though no one was willing to bet against the human. On Earth, Tejo's family gathered around military communication equipment to watch the match. His sister Minsu had not slept properly since learning about his situation. He looked so casual about everything, Minsu said, watching Tejo warm up for the fight. Does he not understand how dangerous this is? I think, Colonel Lee said, thoughtfully, that danger means something different to your brother than it does to the rest of the galaxy. The match began at exactly noon, Galactic Standard Time. Champion Vorth entered the arena wearing his traditional crystal armor and carrying weapons that had been blessed by the high priests of his world. He moved with the fluid grace of someone who had trained for combat his entire life. Tejo entered wearing the same basic equipment he had used for every previous fight. He waved cheerfully at the audience and stretched his arms like he was preparing for a light exercise. The fight lasted exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Vorth attacked with perfect technique, using combinations that had never failed him before. Tejo dodged every strike without apparent effort, countered with moves that seemed impossible, and finally ended the match by disarming Vorth and placing his combat knife at the champion's throat. I yield, Vorth said, his voice filled with something that sounded like relief. You are clearly the superior warrior. Tejo stepped back and helped Vorth to his feet. You were pretty good, he said encouragingly. Better than most of the others anyway. The galactic audience sat in stunned silence. Their greatest champion had been defeated as easily as all the others. Commander Kex made an announcement that had never been made in tournament history. Due to the complete elimination of all qualified opponents, Kim Tejo of Earth is declared the automatic winner of this year's Apex tournament. Tejo looked around the arena and shrugged. Does this mean I get a prize or something? He had no idea that his casual question was about to cause the biggest diplomatic crisis in galactic history. After being declared the automatic winner, Tejo expected the tournament to be over. Instead, Commander Kex approached him with what appeared to be desperation in his 4 eyes. We have a situation, Commander Kex announced. Never in tournament. History has someone eliminated all qualified contestants. The rules do not cover this scenario. So I can go home now? Tejo asked hopefully. Not exactly, Commander Kex replied. The Galactic Council has made a special ruling. They are bringing in retired champions, legendary warriors, and military leaders from across the galaxy to fight you. They want to see the full extent of your capabilities. Tejo sighed. How many more fights are we talking about? Approximately 3,000 additional opponents. 3,000 more, Tejo repeated. This is getting ridiculous. I just wanted to go on a school trip. But the tournament organizers were desperate. They had promised the galaxy the greatest combat spectacle in history, and now they had a human child who was treating it like a casual hobby. They needed to find someone, anyone, who could provide him with a real challenge. The first wave of additional opponents included former tournament winners from the past 5 centuries. Tejo defeated them all within the first week. The second wave included active military commanders who had never been defeated in their home systems. Tejo eliminated them while barely paying attention. By the time his elimination count reached 4,000, Tejo was openly yawning during fights. He had started bringing a book to read between matches and sometimes forgot to put it down when opponents entered the arena. "This is embarrassing for everyone involved," Tejo said to Commander Kex during a lunch break. "These warriors are probably very respected in their homeworlds, and I'm making them look silly." "You are demonstrating superior combat skills," Commander Kex replied weakly. "I'm demonstrating that I'm bored," Tejo corrected. "There has to be something more interesting than this." The galactic audience was no longer watching for entertainment. They were watching with the fascination of beings witnessing something that would change their understanding of the universe. In military academies throughout the galaxy, Tejo's fighting techniques were being studied and analyzed. His movement patterns suggest he can predict opponent actions before they occur, reported a military analyst on the insectoid homeworld. "Impossible," replied Admiral Zeph. "Predictive combat capabilities would require cognitive processing speeds beyond any known biological life form. Unless," the analyst said quietly, "his species evolved under conditions that required such capabilities for survival." This conversation was being repeated on hundreds of worlds. The galaxy's military leaders were beginning to understand that Earth was not just another inhabited planet. It was a world that had produced a species with capabilities they had never encountered before. On Earth, Tejo's sister Minsu was dealing with a very different problem. Military officials from every major Earth government wanted to study her brother's performance and understand his abilities. "He has always been good at video games," Minsu told a room full of generals and scientists. "But he was never particularly athletic or aggressive. I still do not understand how he is doing any of this. Your brother appears to possess instinctive combat awareness that exceeds our best-trained soldiers," explained General Kim, the head of Earth's Military Research Division. "We believe this might be a latent capability present in all humans, but rarely activated." "You mean other people could do what he is doing?" Minsu asked. "Possibly," General Kim replied. "But your brother seems to be a natural prodigy at accessing these capabilities." Back in the tournament station, Tejo's elimination count had reached 4,500. He was now fighting opponents who had been specifically selected for their legendary status. Heroes of galactic wars, champions of their species, warriors whose names were spoken with reverence across their home systems. He defeated them all with the same casual efficiency. "Elimination count, 4,800, announced the tournament computer. Tejo was lying on his back on the arena floor, staring up at the artificial sky while waiting for his next opponent. When the challenger appeared, Tejo didn't even bother to stand up. He simply rolled to one side to avoid an attack, tripped his opponent as they passed, and eliminated them with a single shot. Elimination count, 4,900. Commander Kex was receiving emergency communications from across the galaxy. Planetary governments were demanding that the tournament be stopped. Military leaders were calling for immediate diplomatic contact with Earth. Religious leaders were debating whether the human represented divine intervention or cosmic punishment. "Sir," said Commander Kex's assistant, "we have eliminated our entire reserve list of legendary opponents. There is literally no one left in the galaxy who is willing to fight the human." "What do you mean no one is willing?" Commander Kex asked. "Word has spread throughout all warrior societies," the assistant explained. "No one wants to be the next fighter eliminated by a bored human child. It is considered career suicide." In the arena, Tejo had just eliminated his 4,999th opponent. He sat up and looked around the empty space. "That's it," he announced. "I'm officially bored with this tournament. When can I go home?" "Elimination count, 5,000, the tournament computer announced. "New galactic record established." The number sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. 5,000 eliminations was beyond anything in recorded history. The previous record had been 847, set by a legendary warrior who had trained for 3 centuries. Tejo had reached 5,000 in less than 3 weeks, while treating the entire experience as a mild distraction. "Commander Kex," Tejo called out, "I'm ready to go home now. This has been fun, but I have school on Monday and my mom is going to be really upset if I miss any more classes." Commander Kex approached the arena floor with what appeared to be relief in his posture. "The tournament is officially concluded. You are declared the undisputed champion of this and all future tournaments." "All future tournaments," Tejo repeated. "Does that mean I don't have to come back and do this again?" "That is correct," Commander Kex confirmed. "You have achieved a level of dominance that makes further competition meaningless." Tejo stood up and dusted off his armor. "Good. This was interesting for a while, but it got repetitive. Do you have any other games I could try before I go home?" The question caused panic among the tournament organizers. The idea of giving the human access to other galactic competitions was too terrifying to consider. "We will arrange your immediate transport back to Earth," Commander Keck said quickly. As news of Tejo's final elimination count spread throughout the galaxy, emergency sessions were called in every major government. The human had not just won their most prestigious tournament. He had made it clear that their greatest warriors provided him with only temporary entertainment. 5,000 eliminations, Admiral Zeph repeated to his staff, and he was bored. "What does this mean for galactic security?" asked his intelligence chief. Admiral Zeph looked at the footage of Tejo casually stretching after his final fight. "It means," he said quietly, "that we need to make very sure humanity never decides to expand beyond their home system." Commander Kex led Tejo to the tournament's prize ceremony chamber, a massive hall filled with representatives from every major galactic civilization. The walls displayed holographic records of every tournament winner in history, but they had already been updated to show Tejo's unprecedented achievement. "As winner of the Apex tournament," Commander Kex announced formally, "you are entitled to the traditional prizes. First, command of a galactic battle fleet consisting of 1,000 warships." "I don't know how to fly a spaceship," Tejo replied. "And 1,000 seems like way too many." "Second, the title of Supreme Combat Champion of the Galaxy, with all associated privileges and responsibilities." "What kind of responsibilities?" Tejo asked suspiciously. "Leading galactic military operations, settling disputes between worlds, serving as final arbiter in matters of interstellar warfare." Tejo shook his head. "That sounds like work. I'm 16. I'm supposed to be worried about homework and college. Applications, not running space wars." The assembled representatives whispered among themselves in their various languages. Most had expected the human to eagerly accept these honors. Instead, he seemed genuinely uninterested in galactic conquest. "Third," Commander Kex continued, "a permanent seat on the Galactic Council with voting rights on all major interstellar decisions." "Do I have to attend meetings?" Tejo asked. "Regular attendance would be expected." "Then no thanks. I hate meetings." The chamber fell silent. In the entire history of the tournament, no winner had ever refused the traditional prizes. These honors were considered the highest achievements possible in galactic society. "Perhaps you would like time to consider," suggested the Crystalline Empire's ambassador. "I don't need time," Tejo said. "I just want to go home. My mom is probably worried sick, and I have a math test next week that I need to study for." "Kalpa." "Math test," repeated the Reptilian Federation's representative in disbelief. "Yeah, algebra. I'm not very good at it, so I need to practice." The idea that someone capable of eliminating 5,000 galactic warriors was concerned about failing an algebra test was so absurd that several representatives began to question their understanding of human psychology. Admiral Zeph stepped forward from the insectoid delegation. "Perhaps we could arrange for educational exchange programs between Earth and our academic institutions. We have mathematical techniques that might interest you." "That's nice of you," Tejo said, "but I just want to go home and pretend this never happened." What Tejo didn't understand was that pretending this never happened was impossible. His performance had fundamentally changed how the galaxy viewed humanity. Emergency diplomatic missions were already being prepared for Earth. Trade agreements were being drafted and defense strategies were being reconsidered. "Very well," Commander Keck said finally. "We will arrange your immediate transport back to Earth. However, Earth has been granted automatic membership in the Galactic Council, whether you personally participate or not." "That's between you and my government," Tejo said with a shrug. "I just want to get back to my normal life." But even as he spoke, Tejo was beginning to forget the details of his tournament experience. The stress and adrenaline were fading, and the fights were starting to blur together in his memory. By the time he reached the transport chamber, he was already thinking about the school friends he would need to catch up with. The transport process was much gentler than his original arrival. Instead of the violent displacement that had brought him to the tournament, he experienced a smooth transition that felt like stepping through a doorway. One moment he was in the tournament station, the next he was standing in the same cave where he had touched the crystal device. The crystal was gone. In its place was a small metal plaque that read, "Property of Galactic Tournament Authority" in several languages, including Korean. Tejo walked out of the cave and found his classmates and teacher exactly where he had left them. According to his phone, only 30 minutes had passed since he had wandered away from the group. "Tejo," called Mrs. Yang. "Don't wander off like that. We were about to start looking for you." "Sorry," Tejo replied. "I just found this interesting cave." His classmates gathered around as he rejoined the group. "Find anything cool?" asked his friend Ji-hoon. Tejo thought for a moment. He had vague memories of playing some kind of advanced VR game, but the details were already becoming fuzzy. Not really. Just some weird rock formations. As the school group continued their tour, Tejo found himself yawning. He felt unusually tired, as if he had been physically active for several days. But he couldn't remember doing anything more strenuous than walking through caves. Meanwhile, in orbit around Earth, the first galactic diplomatic vessels were approaching the planet. They carried ambassadors who had been hastily briefed on human culture and strict instructions to establish friendly relations at all costs. On Earth, Colonel Lee Dong-woo was in an emergency meeting with world leaders, trying to explain why alien spaceships were requesting permission to establish embassies in every major capital. "They say they want to honor the achievement of someone called Kim Tae-ho," Colonel Lee reported. "Apparently he won some kind of competition that has made humanity famous throughout the galaxy." "Kim Tae-ho," repeated the South Korean representative. "That's a common name. Do we know which Kim Tae-ho they're referring to?" They provided an address in Seoul. The individual appears to be a 16-year-old high school student. Back in Seoul, Tae-ho's family was dealing with their own confusion. Military vehicles had appeared outside their apartment building, and officials were asking to speak with them about their son's galactic achievement. "I think there has been a mistake," Tae-ho's mother said to the uniformed officers at her door. "My son has been on a school trip all day. He just got home an hour ago." "Ma'am," Colonel Lee said gently, "your son has apparently become the most famous human being in galactic history. We need to discuss the implications." In his bedroom, Tae-ho was trying to focus on his algebra homework, but he kept feeling distracted by dreams or memories he couldn't quite grasp. He remembered fighting, but it felt more like a video game than real combat. He remembered winning something, but he couldn't remember what. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his friend Ji-hoon from the school trip. "Did you see the news?" Ji-hoon asked excitedly. "There are alien spaceships all over Earth. They say they're here because of someone from our country." "Really?" Tae-ho said, looking out his window. He could see strange lights in the sky that definitely hadn't been there that morning. "That's weird. The news says the aliens want to establish diplomatic relations because a human won some kind of tournament. Can you imagine being that famous?" Tae-ho yawned again. "I can't imagine wanting to be that famous. It sounds like too much work." As he hung up the phone and returned to his algebra problems, Tae-ho had no idea that military academies throughout the galaxy were creating new courses based on his fighting techniques, that his name was being discussed in the highest levels of interstellar government, and that he had single-handedly changed humanity's place in the cosmic community. All he knew was that he was tired, his homework was difficult, and he was looking forward to a normal day at school tomorrow. Outside his window, the first galactic embassy ships began their descent toward Earth, carrying representatives who hoped to understand the species that had produced the most feared warrior in known space. Tejo closed his textbook and got ready for bed, completely unaware that he had become a legend.